Ladies and gentlemen, I am who you think I am, and today we're going to be talking about the Roaring 20s. Woo! Art Deco, jazz, alcohol? Question mark? Anyways, before the 1920s though, well, apparently we're going to talk about this thing called the Red Summer of 1919, where everybody went like, oh fuck, the communists are coming! And this guy named, Palmer went like, guys, we gotta arrest all the communists. Like, gosh, we're gonna get invaded. They're gonna bring fucking communism to our country. Fucking red commies and shit. And so the Palmer raids basically went out and arrested thousands of people and deported them. But then people went like, wait, but are they actually communists? And Palmer's like, I mean, they could be. So, they got less popular as it went on. But, people started blaming all their problems on fucking communists and labor unions and strikes and shit. And they also mixed in, African Americans and other races with that too. Because we're gonna blame all of our problems on everybody that isn't us. But in the 1920s, things are starting to roar up. With the election of Warren G. Harding, he advocated for a return to normalcy. Harding's normalcy. Huh? No? Okay. But, anyways, this apparent normalcy was followed up by prohibition, which was definitely not exactly normal. It was basically championed by the Women's Christian Temperance Union and also the Anti-Saloon League. And so people are like, fucking alcohol, get out of my face. So with the coming of World War I and then throughout, the Anti-Saloon League said, fuckers, I mean, gosh, you're not patriotic if you don't support getting alcohol out of our lives. Fuckers. And so, January 1919, Nebraska becomes the 36th state to ratify the 18th Amendment, banning alcohol. Or rather, the transport and sale of alcohol, but not the possession of alcohol. There's also other loopholes, such as doctors being able to prescribe whiskey, drugstores could dispense it, and also sacramental wine could be used for them religions. So obviously, all of those loopholes would be exploited. But what this prohibition actually did was just kind of create an environment where everybody was now suddenly willing to break the law. Because, what the fuck am I gonna do without my goddamn liquor? So, So, you got shit like, Al Capone rising up with the help of this guy named Colasomo and, Johnny Torrio or whatever the fuck. And then you got, near the end of it, you've got the St. Valentine's Day massacre where 7 people got lined up by fake police officers and shot down with Tommy guns. But, yeah. Also, that Ponzi scheme where, people invest money and then new investors are paid back by old investors and there's no money being actually invested? Well, that starts today with this guy named Charles Ponzi. Wow, crazy shit. Cool. And so, however, there's also, scandals in the government with, Harding giving out, what is it? Let me read the exact thing again. His Secretary of the Interior, Albert Fall, basically leased out oil fields to some other people, and they're like, hold up, wait. That's a lot of money disappearing. Wait a second. And so we got some congressional investigation going on from the Senators Burton K. Wheeler and Thomas Walsh, going like, wait a second. What's all this money going around? What the fuck? And that became the Teapot Dome scandal. Woot. Heck, even the Prohibition Enforcement Division of the Treasury was corrupt. They would ignore violations as long as enough money is left in a fishbowl in a New York City hotel room. because you know that's how corruption works. You put money in a fishbowl. It's how we roll. But not everything was pretty shit in the 1920s. Just some of it. I know it's crazy. Like all these past centuries, so much of it was shit. But now in the 1920s, only like half of it was shit, and the other half consists of stuff like women getting the right to vote. Cool. And with the 19th Amendment, August 1920. People like what was it? Carrie Chapman Cat. Apologies, I got interrupted. What was I talking about? Yeah, Carrie Chapman Cat, and also people like Jane Addams, and other people. Ah, fuck! I got interrupted again. Hold up. Anyway, and so this led to people like, you know, Jeanette Rankin being elected to Congress and shit, being the first woman to be elected to Congress. You know, she was the only one that cast the no vote in World War I and II. Remember that shit? Maybe. And then, of course, like, colored women's clubs went to Kat, who was, like, the main promoter of this amendment, going like, hey, please, can you not, like, have compromising language that's gonna let the states deny our right to vote? And Kat was like, but what if I don't do anyway? And so, you know, racism be racism. Let's see. Yeah. That was the thing. That was pretty cool. And in the 1920s as well, culture's starting to change up a bit. As in, like, women can do things now and, like, leave the house and drink at bars and shit. Oh, well, they can't legally drink at bars, but, like, bruh, now they can drink at bars and shit. And, you know, flappers are a thing now. Basically just... how do I describe this? Oh yeah, they like to fucking drink and do whatever the fuck they want, like a normal human being with actual agency. So yeah, that's the thing. There's this person named Margaret Sanger that became a birth control advocate. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, and she started up like Planned Parenthood and shit. You know, things you never knew. Planned Parenthood started about 100 years ago today, or maybe really it's like 90 years ago today. But it's close enough. Cars are becoming a thing now. That's pretty cool. You know, Ford, Chrysler, Chevrolets, all sorts of shit starting to pop up. And they even, like, granted privacy to people that people didn't have before. Like, now you have a car that has closed doors, and then they even made closed sedans that weren't just open cars. So, you know, that was pretty cool. Radio's the thing now, and Congress passes a radio act so they can, you know, organize all the stations onto frequencies. And that was pretty lit. Movies are a thing now, too. Like, you know, Mickey Mouse is coming around, and silent and talking pictures are starting to become a thing. You know, people like Charlie Chaplin coming along, doing some comedy. All these movies, and also new newspapers as well. Magazines, like Time Magazine, Life Magazine, all sorts of shit starting up. And they're starting to make heroes out of people, you know. Babe Ruth, the baseball guy, and Jack Dempsey, the boxing guy, and Charles Lindbergh, the flying guy, and all sorts of crazy shit. Writers are starting to write shit too. You know, stuff like Main Street by Sinclair Lewis and Babbitt. Poets like T.S. Eliot. Heck, even F. Scott Fitzgerald writing shit like Great Gatsby, you know? That book we're going to be studying in like a month or something. I don't know who's going to watch this and when you're going to watch this. I assume you're going to be studying The Great Gatsby at some point. It's a magnificent piece of classical literature. But along with this rise of classical literature stuff is the Harlem Renaissance, which comes up from all the black people moving north to get out of the shitty South, then realizing, shit, the North sucks too. I guess we're just gonna have to deal with it. And so the Harlem Renaissance would basically be a period where black people are starting to be like, hey, let's just try to figure this shit out and do stuff. Which is pretty cool. You know, you got novelists like Richard Wright writing Native Son and Black Boy. You got papers like the Chicago Defender promoting black migration. All sorts of stuff. Heck, there's this guy named Marcus Garvey, promoting the UNIA, which is basically an organization that said, hey, let's just all work hard and make ourselves better. And then he even made a shipping company called the Black Star Line that failed. So, that kind of sucked. But anyways, there's also a lot of conflicts about American ideals because at this point, we've been around for a while. We've had a lot of immigrants come in and become natives. And now all those natives are starting to look at new immigrants being like, what the fuck are you doing here? So, stuff like the Ku Klux Klan is coming back. I mean, everybody missed the Ku Klux Klan. We were all nostalgic for the time when people would run around in fucking white bed sheets shooting up people, shooting up the town, shooting up the school, shooting up people, and then forcing anybody that wasn't a white Protestant to not vote. We loved that, didn't we? Apparently we did, because it came back, but only in the 1920s. It kind of died out in the late 30s, and they were opposed by people like the Catholic Knights of Columbus and the American Unity League. But, it was pretty powerful when it had like 5 million people in it, and it had the slogan, one flag, one school, one Bible. Truly good old-fashioned American organization. And the KKK wasn't the only thing that would be racist against people. Eugenics and IQ tests were a thing too, because IQ wasn't actually a test of your intelligence, it was a test of how fucking white, Northern Protestant, Northern European you were, and so that they could admit you through immigration. Crazy. Margaret Sanger was also actually advocate for eugenics as well, along with Henry Goddard, a fucking psychologist, and all sorts of shit. And so the eugenics movement, which started in England in the late 1880s, is now here, and we're being like, hey, we gotta breed the right people so that we can be smart and strong and not dumb. Come on, it's not rocket science, it's human science. And then eugenics kind of faded into the late 1930s when you got people like Hitler starting to, use it as justifications in Mein Kampf, and people are starting to be like, wait, hold up, maybe we kind of fucked this up a little bit. Yeah. But all this hatred of immigration leads to immigration restriction, including, like, a literal immigration restriction league, with Congress starting to pass shit like the, the Immigration Restriction Act, which set quotas based on the based on the 1890 census, that shit that was 30 years ago, and said 2% of every ethnic group from that census can come into the country at a time, but no Asians, because fuck Asians, fucking tiny eyes and shit. But, it's joking, but with the signing of another bill, wait, what is it called? Hold up. I could have sworn there was another one. Just like, give me 1 second. Who knows. But then there was another immigration thing passed in 1924, which was signed by Coolidge saying, America must be kept American. Because clearly all of these Americans were born here and not from anywhere else. Who fucking knows what that means? And then whenever all the other countries went like, hey, why can't people immigrate to your country anymore? The United States was like, well, fuck off. We're a nation of immigrants, but now we have enough immigrants. So piss off, thank you very much. We've got enough people here. We don't like your people. Get the fuck out of here. You weren't born here. So yeah. There's also this case involving these guys, Nicolas Sacco and Bartolomeo Vanzetti, where they were basically just random anarchist immigrants that were accused of murdering somebody, and there was no evidence against them, but they got executed. Because xenophobia, bitches. It's a thing. But, however, economic prosperity didn't touch everybody. Especially farmers. Because during the war, all the staple crops like wheat and grain and cotton and shit, they were fucking important. You know? Because Europe wasn't growing that. They were killing each other. By the thousands. So, the United States took up the slack. Except now, after the war, they're kind of... Europe started planning things again. Which is an issue, because now we're overproducing. And everything's worth less. And so the only thing farmers did went like, hey, if we're producing so much shit that prices are dropping, let's produce more shit so we can get more money. Which you know, doesn't work. So yeah. They tried to pass a McNary-Haugen bill that would like try to alleviate that with government intervention, except Coolidge went like, what the fuck are you doing? No, fuck you guys. Free market, laissez-faire. So that kind of died. And there were also massive floods in 1927 that fucked over a bunch of people. So, yeah. Farmers are in the shitter right now. Oh yeah, since all this religion stuff, all these Protestants are trying to get back together and say, hey, fuck everybody else. That includes evolution. So there's this Scopes monkey trial where Tennessee had a book that they require teachers to use, but they also banned the teaching of evolution, of which there was one line referring to it inside the book that they forced everybody to use. Tennessee's smart. And so, there's this Scopes monkey trial where they're like, hey, hey, you taught evolution, what the fuck? And he's like, yeah, I guess I did. And so, bam, got fined. So yeah. More people hating on evolution and science, haha. And so, now let's talk about some presidents. So Harding was a guy. He died pretty suddenly, and although he did hire some people to do stuff like doing the Washington Conference and writing up a 5 powers treaty, which would, you know, limit arms for once in everybody's lives. He cut government spending. He hired a guy named Andrew Mellon who would drive financial policy throughout the Roaring 20s. And then he even hired, like, this guy named Herbert Hoover that would become the Secretary of Congress and then later the president after Coolidge, who was the vice president who took over after Harding died. So, Coolidge was pretty quiet, and he just kind of did shit. He got his secretary to sign a Kellogg-Briand Pact where apparently war was made illegal, except that they were completely happy to continue military intervention in Latin America. So, you know. And they also, the country also continued foreign investment a lot. As if they were going to stop, but like, you know, they just kept doing it. And then finally came the election of 1928. It was a lot different. So now you got this Herbert Hoover guy from earlier and this Smith guy from the South. But here's the thing, the Smith guy is a Catholic, while Hoover is a Protestant. So the Protestant South went like, hey, actually, fuck the Democrats. He's a fucking Catholic. We're Protestant. Fuck KKK. Wait, we're the KKK. We hate Catholics. And so, you know, whenever Smith went down south to do rallies, there'd be burning crosses everywhere and people in mysterious white hoods kind of flipping the bird and being like, hey, you best get out of this neighborhood, partner. You reposted in the wrong neighborhood. And so he was like, damn, I don't know these people out here. I don't speak their language. So Hoover won by a little bit. And so he would go into the 30s being like, I'm going to continue the prosperity of the roaring 20s. But then he got trolled because Great Depression, motherfuckers. Which we're going to talk about next time. Have fun. Good night, good morning, something. Keep on studying.